Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, the other day I was at an airport and I approached a pilot. I looked up at the airplane. I said, "How often do these things crash?" He said, "Just once, usually." Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at First in Flight from Artana.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
In First in Flight from Artana, 1 to 4 players take on the roles of various pilots in the early days of aviation as they attempt to set a record and achieve victory. Players will begin by putting out the game board in front of them. They'll also go ahead and prepare the decks for the various development cards. You have skill cards, friend cards, and technology cards. You go ahead and you'll put those out. You've also got a little tray that's going to have some of the basic cards you're going to use in this game, and more on that later. Now, players are going to get a player mat. They're going to put in front of them, which has a garage on it with space for a couple of cards. More on that later. And you're also going to select your pilot. You're going to place your pilot on that card. And your pilot's going to give you certain unique abilities over the course of the game. Each player is going to place their airplane on the airplane track, and then you're going to look at the rondelle. You're going to place your your little figures, your little bust figures, kind of in a place ready to go to enter the rondelle. Essentially, you're going to determine that randomly initially, but what's going to happen is it is always going to be the last person in line that will take the first move. Now, you're going to start with the starter deck. Essentially, in your starter deck, you've got 9 cards. You're going to take 4 glide cards, which just represent 1. You're going to take an experience card, which allows you to not only move 1, but you can also grab another glide card. And then you're going to have 4 design flaw cards. And you're going to go ahead, you're going to mix that up together. That is going to be your starting deck. Now, what's going to happen is, as I say, once you begin the game, you are going to be moving around the rondelle, selecting different actions. Now, each space has actions. There's also a little time space, which is going to play an important role in the game as well. But what you're going to do is always the last person in the configuration here, they are going to choose where to go. And they can go along any of the spaces to the tracks. But of course, the further they go, it's going to cost them time, potentially turns. So they want to go to a place that's perhaps the most advantageous, depending on what they want to do at a given time. Now, the most basic thing you're trying to do is actually fly. So where you can, you want to take the fly action. Now, when you take the fly action, essentially what you do is you can lay out a number of cards. Now, these cards added together will allow you initially to go that number of spaces. So you've just got a pretty weak hand. You're not going to go very far. But what's key here is when you draw 4 of the design flaws, that is to say 4 cards with kind of the red explosion on them, you crash. So you don't want to draw too many of those. Some of them will still let you move a little bit, but you're getting kind of dangerous. It's getting dangerous for you, and you may crash the more of those you draw. There may also be other kind of unkind things that happen to you when you play these cards. Now, when you've gone, you think far enough, and you're scared you could crash, you can play your descent card. Now, this is a special card you have. It's bigger than the other cards you have, so you're not going to mix it in with your deck, because you can always play your descent. You play your descent card, and then you must play 2 more cards. So you play those 2 more cards, and again, at that point, if you have 4 of your flaw cards with the explosion on it, you crash. If you crash, you go face down. You're going to lose time. But if not, if you have less than 4, you can go the distance of however many cards you played, whatever the distance on them was. If, as I say, you do play the experience card, you get to draw another glide card and add that to your hand after you've used it to fly. Now, that's basically how you're flying. But as the game progresses, you're going to want to fly further because let's say you moved 7. Well, if on your next flight you only move 5, nothing happens. You have to beat that. And every round you have to fly farther and farther. So if I'm at 7 and I move 9, I'm only going to move 2 more spaces. So it's all based on 0, how far you're going to fly, and you've got to keep pushing yourself. And so there's a real push of luck aspect as you're trying to play those cards, but of course those crash icons can come up and screw you over. When you have crashed, you can actually put some of these design flaws in the garage, meaning you want to repair them. So what you can do then is later you can land on a repair action. When you do a repair action, you can replace one of these design flaws, which have a lot of nasty stuff, with just kind of a basic flight problem that you can go ahead and add to your hand. This means you've still got that crash icon, but maybe unlike some of the design flaws, which could potentially have more crash icons, or they have other nasty things, that's just all they have is one crash icon. So it's good to swap those out, but you can also gain bonuses with that action as well. Now, you can also do an upgrade action. Essentially, what you can do is you can pay any number, I think up to 4 coins. You can pay that in order to look at that number of upgrade cards. And some of these upgrade cards just move you 2, some of them 3 or 4 or 5. So you can go ahead and you can see which ones you want to take. You take 2 of those cards, you add them to your deck. The others, I think they go on the bottom. I can't remember. They get shuffled back in. And then you must take a new design flaw card as well, because with every new innovation, there's the potential for problems. There are spots where you can purchase cards for, from the development decks, from the friend deck, from the technology deck, or from the skill deck. And these different cards will do different things. They may affect you. Some of them will be one-time play cards. Some of them will be persistent bonuses that will help you throughout the game. There will be some spots that allow you to take coins, and there will be other spots that allow you to take any action you want. Now, as you are playing this game, as your pilots are moving further and further, once they pass 15 on the flight track, you can actually take your pilot card and flip it over to its famous site. It is now famous, and its abilities are now enhanced. You have more that you can do. Now, all things being equal, the game will last 4 rounds. You'll do this 4 times, and whoever gets furthest will win the game. However, if one player manages to make it to the 40 spot first, you finish that round, and whoever is flown the furthest wins. First in flight. So this was a game that was not on my radar. I was contacted by the good people at Artana. They asked me if I would like to play this game, and I had heard literally nothing about it. I was, however, very intrigued with the theme. First in flight. My older brother was an airline captain for years. My father flew a little. His father, my grandfather, he actually flew. And I used to fly a little bit. I never got my license, but I did solo. And so there's always been in my family a fascination with aviation. And so the theme interested me right off the bat. Rondels typically are not my favorite kinds of mechanisms in games. I mean, I don't hate them, but they haven't been something that have made me super excited. But I did like the deck building aspect of this, and I really thought the push your luck aspect here would be very interesting. So Ray and I played a 2-player game. With a 2-player game, you kind of have like a bot that plays the game with you, a third player that is a non-player character that just can throw a monkey wrench into the works and can claim some of these spaces that maybe you and your opponents want. And so we played the game, and it took me a while to get in here because there's a few subtleties and nuances I wasn't quite grasping. Some of the cards had some really cool abilities that initially I wasn't taking full advantage of, and then when I did, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, these things are great. And there were some penalties, and one of the things we forgot too was, you put those flaw cards in the garage, but the next time you take a flight, you got to shuffle them back into your hand. There were a few times we forgot to do that. I think I was the worst offender there. But you have to do that in order to, because when you're flying, all that stuff matters. Kind of think of it as taking the engine out or something like that. Well, you got to put it back in when you actually fly. So there was a little bit of a learning curve, not bad. Generally, the rule book here is quite good, frankly. It's got a lot of good examples, and overall, it's a pretty engaging system in that it's easy to learn, it's easy to teach. Little bit of a learning curve, but it's what game doesn't have a little bit of a learning curve, right? So we started playing the game, and Ray really likes racing games. He's a fan of games that race, and so I could tell right off the bat he was digging this. And for me, it was a little bit slower. It was like when I realized what the cards can do and how the systems interacted and how the cards work together. That it took me a while to get there. And when I got to that point, I realized something that Ray had grasped pretty early on, and that is this game is fantastic. This is such a fun game. I loved the racing element of this game. You're trying to get to 40, or at least trying to get as far as you can. And to do that, you've got to push your luck. And sometimes you crash. And if you crash, you lose time. You're not going to have access to the same choices of actions as everyone else. There's a real competition too along that track for those actions, right? You're really trying to find out, well, I want to do this and I want to do this, but somebody's in front of me. Now I can like leap far ahead and maybe skip over a bunch of other possible actions, in which case again I'm burning time. I'll have less actions, but sometimes you got to get to that space. I got to take a flight this turn, or I got to repair this turn, or I desperately need some upgrades this turn. So you've got some real good choices there. How far am I willing to go in order to clear all that stuff up, right? It's phenomenal. It's a great game. It's got this great deck building aspect to it. It does have the rondelle, which I thought was fun here and engaging here. And then you've got really the spice and sugar of this game, though, is all these cards and the interactions of the cards and how they come together and how they're going to affect your flight, because that ultimately is what matters. And those moments when you're putting those cards out, and you're seeing how far you go, and you're just cringing that you're going to be drawing those cards. And then there's that moment where, like, do I want to keep going, or do I start my descent now? And you make that decision, and who knows? But it's such a great feeling when you get those really high value cards. You get a 4 out there, you get a 5 out there, and then you get a bunch of 1s, and sometimes you just get a ton of 1s because you're going to be constantly getting some of the glide cards into your hand. And it's funny too, because when you're cleaning up, you play your cards and cleaning up, you put that descend card in there with it, and so you're grabbing it, and it's like big. So you're not going to get it mixed up with the other cards. So you can just pull that out, and you're not going to play that. But it's funny how many times you go to grab it, you're even thinking about it. You're like, oh, that doesn't fit there, So kudos to the company for making that card bigger. But really, really, really like this game. It was a big hit with Ray and I. Looking forward to getting this to the table more often, because it is just super fun. Recommendation for the discriminating gamer for First in Flight is buy it. Well, thank you once again for joining us on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history, books on history. I post some of my lectures on there. I would ask you to please check that out. Please subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. Also, we'd ask you to leave a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. Now, if you are a fan of the channel and you like the content we bring you here, we would humbly ask you to go ahead and click on the Super Thanks button on this YouTube page and leave a tip. Ladies and gentlemen, what's the difference between God and a pilot? God doesn't think he's a pilot. Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band. Oh!
No, I can do 5.
That's right.
But the problem is, I don't know if I haven't. I think the rest of these are all damage. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you lucked out. You lucked out, man.